Yes, like I was saying, now we see that uh, nutrition is a process by which living organisms obtain and consume and use the food substances to maintain their life processes or the metabolic processes. And as I was saying, the metabolic process is trying to explain to us or is trying to tell us that whatever substance that we take in at the end of the day gives us what? A waste substance as a byproduct of it. At the end of the day, as part of the byproduct, as part of the end product, at the end of the day, you are going to have a waste product or a toxic substance that is being what? That is being produced out of what was being consumed in the body. The water that we take in, at the end of the day, it is not all that quantity of water that is being used in our body. Some of the water is being used by what? By our kidney to detoxify our kidney. That is why you always have to what? To stay hydrated. You understand? And at the end of the day, one of the major components of urine is what? Is water. The rest is what? Urea, ammonia, salt. That is understandable. Now, this nutrient that we take in, it is either from two sources, either from plant source or an animal source. So the nutrients that we get in green plants include water, mineral salts, carbon dioxide, and in that of animals, we can talk of carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and the rest. So nutrients is being obtained from two sources, that is either from a plant source or an animal source. Now, we have ways of what? Of consuming this nutrient, and we have combined certain things. We have grouped certain things, and now we have it in two groups only. And under these two groups, you are able to find out what? Other sub processes of or mode of what? Nutrition. Of which you can talk of the heterotrophic nutrition. That is nourishment on others. Hetero, when we say hetero, it involves two way of what? Of um, consuming the nutrition. Then we have autotrophic, that is self-nourishment. You understand? The self-nourishment of nutrition. Now let's look at the autotrophic, which is the self-nourishment nutrition. Now we can describe this to be a mode of nutrition whereby an organism is able to synthesize its own food from inorganic nutrients using some external sources of energy. So any organism that is able to synthesize its own food from inorganic nutrients using some external source of energy, such organisms are called what? Autotrophs. They are the ones that prepare their own what? Food. They are the ones that are able to what? To convert an inorganic nutrient for it to become what? Organic. And in autotrophic nutrition, we can divide it into two depending on the external source of energy used to drive those processes. And number one that we can talk of is photosynthesis. Why photosynthesis? Because plants prepare their own what? Food by the application of what? Of sunlight as their main source of what? Of energy. You understand? And that is why plants qualify to be under what? Under autotrophic mode of nutrition. Not just plant only. We have algae. We have photosynthetic bacteria. You understand? Algae like Spirogera, right? Spirogera has a photosynthetic what? Structure, and it is what? Autotrophic. We also have photosynthetic bacteria that are also able to what? To synthesize their own food from inorganic what? Nutrient. We also have a chemosynthesis. With chemosynthesis is also where organisms make their own food with the help of energy from specific chemical reactions, either from oxidation of various inorganic compounds. Example are chemosynthetic bacteria. Chemosynthesis. Now, I can give you one example of chemosynthesis, right? We have the likes of nitrogen fixation bacteria like azotobacter. Okay, like azotobacter. That is able to what? Convert nitrogen into its useful forms, or that is able to what? To to convert ammonia into nitrate for it to be able to what? To be used by the plant. That is also what? A chemosynthesis, where they are able to make this thing on their own. So that is that for autotrophic nutrition. Now let's move on to heterotrophic nutrition. With heterotrophic nutrition, it is that mode of nutrition whereby organisms obtain their food by feeding on already manufactured inorganic food compounds. I take it again. The mode of nutrition whereby organisms obtain their food by feeding on already manufactured organic food compounds. So for them, they don't make their own food, but they rather feed on what? Already manufactured organic food compounds. That is, after an autotroph is done preparing their food, heterotrophs feed on some of the what? Some of the autotrophic foods or some of the autotrophic products. That is what they feed on. You get it? Then heterotrophs are incapable of making their own food. Have you ever seen any animal, any human being using any part of their organ, okay, to prepare any kind of food and they bring it out through their mouth and they sell it for others? No. They rather go in for the what? For the product that is being produced from autotrophs, and that is what they feed on. That is what they do what? They feed on. You might ask, then if that is what they feed on, what does the autotrophs also feed on? Now, they feed on their main source of energy, that is sunlight. Sunlight is the energy that they need. After they use the sunlight, after they are able to consume the sunlight, they now convert the sunlight into useful forms, whereby using them to prepare food. That will be their byproduct. But as humans, we are incapable of preparing our own food. Therefore, we go in for the product from what? From autotrophs, and that is what we feed on. Now, heterotrophs include all animals, all sort of animals. They are all autotrophs. Fungi, insectivorous plants, and most bacteria. When we say insectivorous plants, what are they? It's a very good question. Insectivorous plants. We have other plants that are not able to prepare their own, but they also depend on on other products from the autotrophics mode of nutrition for survival. And when it comes to heterotrophics, we are able to divide them into 5 major groups or 5 major types. The first one that we will talk of is parasitism. Parasitism. In basic knowledge, we'll be talking about parasites. And with parasitism, We call it an association, or we give it the term an association because parasitism exists between what? Two organisms. You understand? It involves what? Two organisms. And this organism, one might either suffer or one might what? Benefit. That is why we use the word what? Association. So it is an association between two living organisms of different species, in which one organism is a parasite which obtains the food, okay, from the other organism, that is the host. And the host might either suffer injury and harm. For example, you'll be there, you are a host now. If we all should choose to go and sit outside as we talk, there's going to be something feeding on our body. There's going to be an organism to feed on our skin. And what organism is that? Who can help us out? What organism is that?
Mosquito.
Mosquitoes, very good. They feed on our skin. And what do they leave behind? What do they leave behind? When they feed on our blood, what do they leave behind?
Peace.
Very good. There are pains. What else? Aside the pains, what else? Mm-hmm.
A plasmodium.
Crying.
Very good.
Mosquito Hey, this.
Very good. So they leave all these things behind. Now, some parasite that we can talk about is a tapeworm in the gut of man. You all know tapeworms, right? Now, tapeworm, especially when you have them in your intestines, you understand they feed on them and they cause great harm to you. A cow and a tick. We see ticks all around the tails of cows. Yes, the tails of cows, the back of their ears and other stuff. We found them there. And what is their purpose? To suck blood. What did they leave there? A big wound. Yes, a big wound. That's what they leave there. And a bed bag and a man. So anyone who is in a boarding house has a great uncle that you will never forget. That is a bed bag. Yes,
Mm.
yes. They normally feed on our blood. That is what they feed on. That is their only
Yes.
source of food.
Yes.
Yes. So whenever we are done with preps, we go and we perform the normal rituals. You have to sleep, if you like it or not. You have to sleep for them to feed on your blood.
Yes.
That is a bed bag for you. Now, that is that for parasitism. So with parasitism, it involves two what? Organisms. Where one organism is obtaining food and shelter from that organism. Now, it will surprise you that bedbug receives two things from man, and that is what? Food and shelter. Food and shelter. You might feel that a bedbug has beaten you. You wake up and they are fast than anything. They will either hide in your clothes, they will either hide within your bed, anywhere. So they benefit two things from us, and that is you, the host, that suffers the what? The injury. I remember when I was teaching you guys ecology, we talked about successions, right? Where we talked of mutualism and other ways of friendship within an ecosystem. The second thing that we also talk about is phagocytosis. When we say phagocytosis, okay, especially amoeba, they feed by, when we say phagocytosis, okay, phagocytosis is where an organism feeds by engulfing the food. When we say they engulf the food, I might write a bit. I might write a bit here. That is, let me try and bring this up here. Choose